My early childhood was spent in a family florist business. My mum was an amazing florist, very, very skilled. She grew up in her family business. I had the joy and the luck of watching her work, learning from her, joining in, and was always around flowers and wire and tape, colour and garden centre, a nursery growing flowers. So that essence of flowers and floristry and just being gently artistic is what I've always known, always. One of my fondest memories of being with her, actually, I must have been probably early school age, and I was allowed to sit next to her when she was making the wedding bouquets, and this was using things like hyacinth pips, tiny flowers, each one individually wired and taped. So very, very skilled, intricate work. And I'd sit next to her watching her create these beautiful bridal bouquets and corsages and headdresses. And at the end, the little bits that were left over were mine to do something with. I used to sit almost in a state of rapture watching her, maybe passing little things. But it was a really, really special experience that I remember really fondly. Just being in and out of the greenhouses as a child, where we used to grow freesia. One quite an old looking greenhouse. You just opened the door and it was full of freesia growing that we could just go and pick. So the recollection of the fragrance of these flowers, so that was brilliant. And another, we used to, a few years late, well, many years later, so I guess I was in my 30s, we used to buy fresh flowers from a Dutch wholesaler. The Dutchmen come over with these incredible lorries where the side opens up, and what you're presented with is rows and rows of flowers tightly stacked, head face on. So you see the heads of the carnations and the roses and the foliages and the berries, whatever, almost like a tapestry of flowers. It's the most incredible sight. And I have very, very strong memories of early morning buying from the Dutch wholesaler and just choosing the colours, the textures that we would then use in our floristry. And that again was magical. It was always early in the morning, so there was a sort of excitement about that being very early to meet the Dutch wholesaler.
There is something about early morning.
Not many people around. I'm used to park in one of the big car parks in town. And then we take them back to the nursery, these flowers, and unpack them, start conditioning them, cutting them carefully. Yeah, it was hard work, but good work and full of colour and fragrance and texture. And those elements are so sort of evident in what I do now, which is about colour and shape and juxtapositioning one thing with another, which is artistry, isn't it? It's allowing different forms to be seen to their best advantage. And I try to, in a very simple, humble way, I try and do that now in my textile art. It's not, obviously what I'm doing now is not floristry, but the roots of it are definitely in floristry. So that was a quick journey. That was childhood to late middle age in a couple of sentences. My working life took a very different turn. I became a speech and language therapist, working with children with very complex needs locally. But I always worked during my holidays and evenings and weekends. I always joined my mum in her business, her floristry business. So I never stopped doing it. But after goodness, nearly 30 years, I had a couple of experiences that were personally quite challenging within that work context, and very quickly felt totally depleted. One of those pivotal moments where I was walking one evening after work, walking on the common with my husband, and suddenly all this stress was utterly overwhelming. And I'm not somebody that suffers from stress very much, but on this particular occasion, these issues had been brewing for a couple of weeks. And I so clearly remember walking with him on the common and just howling with despair, really, that this particular circumstance at work had become so difficult. And he just said, well, then stop, you don't need to do it. And that makes me feel quite teary actually thinking about it. That was such a liberating moment. And I thought, yes, actually, I don't have to do this. There are other options. But I couldn't have done it without his support financially. And that's a key thing, isn't it? Our paths through life are governed by many different factors, and thankfully, at that time, we were able to lose my salary. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to stop. I had already started selling a few things at markets and so on, so that had been brewing. And I met somebody called Elizabeth, she was a very positive influence for a fairly short time in my life. But it was one of those meetings, I think, that happened for a reason. We had a lot of fun trading together and making different. She made jewellery. I did, at the time, mostly crocheted flowers and brooch things. And that she definitely helped me make a transition from paid speech therapy into frivolous, precarious crafting, whatever. So yeah, Elizabeth was a key player at that point, so that was significant. And then things just sort of grew very, very, on a very small scale. My business is tiny, 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 but it provides me with a huge amount of pleasure, and it is the basis of my social life now. Apart from my family, most of the people I know are other creative people, market traders, makers. Maker, I think it's a great name. People who make. A maker as a term is quite solid and powerful and it's very satisfying. Sense of achieving something. And if I can't make things, I am awful. I have to. We used to have a dining room. Now we don't have a dining room. Again, thankfully, my very tolerant husband has agreed with my need for a space in the house, which is a very, to my mind, quite a congested space, but everything's there and it works really well. And I have a view of who's coming to the house. Once I've done the sort of day-to-day things that need doing, my aim is to get into that room and make. And if I'm prevented from doing that,
You're not yourself.
No, that's exactly it. I'm not myself. I'm not being true to myself, or I feel something's missing, for sure. To make, that's what I want to do. It's what I need to do. And thankfully, because I'm at the market every 2 weeks, I can feel a sense of I've got to make stock and I've got to have enough. When I'm at the market, I spend most of the time watching people as they walk past my stall, and they might just give it barely a glance and walk on. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't catch their attention. But then people that come along and notice something and take the time to stop and look and maybe ask a question, maybe talk to me, whatever. Sometimes people just take photos. They don't engage with me at all. They just stop and take photos of things. But anyway, so sitting there, I spend a lot of time watching people's facial expressions and noticing what they're drawn to or what they dismiss, because I need to know that so that I can adjust what I make. So I've got to be a bit savvy because I want to sell things. But then sometimes when people stop and like something and they might be quite generous in their feedback, that is just so lovely. That perhaps that's a neediness in me, I don't know. But I certainly appreciate.
We all need.
Yeah, and connecting. People say, "Oh, that's a snowdrop," or "My dad loves snowdrops," and you know that's a nice thing to share with people. Just thinking about it makes me feel quite energized. Yeah.
I'm just looking at little tree behind you.
Oh yeah.
And every now and then the sun is shining on it.
So that's the dogwood.
Yeah.
Just coming into bud. It's beautiful. It's the best thing, isn't it? When you see, yeah, there's a black lace behind. I quite often find myself looking. Well, obviously, I look at flowers and the way the petals form and the centre of the flower and the leaves and the sepals and everything. That's an important part for me as well. I'm trying to, in a simple way, trying to mimic those natural forms, which so many of us arty types do. I have a very good friend who's also somebody I met through trading at the market. And she's a sewer mainly. But very often on a Friday morning we go to a local garden centre and have coffee and chat and so on. And then we just wander around the garden centre, just looking and noticing the things that have changed with the plants. And that is because we're on the same wavelength with that experience, noticing the buds, you know, the shape of the buds and the size of them and whether they're covered in a sort of hairiness, and it's tiny things, but that's a real joy to notice. That's just so important, is to notice and to be mindful of simple things.